Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today at Rocks and Stocks News. Got another of our interviews with executives from mining companies. And recently on X, I became aware of Fuerte Metals. And on a side note, I'm always a fan of companies that are making the effort in digital marketing because I think that that is the most cost-effective way to do things these days. And therefore, I was excited to see Tim Warman putting out posts on his with his drill core, and I saw grades and stuff in there that I really like. So I'm happy to have Forte Metals on today. Tim, thank you very much for joining me.
Well, thanks, Al. It's great to be here.
So yeah, the first thing I saw was breccia and with very good grades of silver and gold.
Yeah,
And that always has a way of catching my attention. So that's the nature of what I wanted to talk about today.
yeah. That core that I posted was from our Christina deposit in Chihuahua, and
Okay.
yeah, it's an interesting project. I work with a partner in this business named Charlie Roncos, and Charlie used to be the VPX at Goldcore, for many years, as he says, back when Goldcore was still a good company. And when he left Goldcore, he actually picked up a couple of properties in Mexico that Goldcore had, picked them up personally, put them into a private company, and then we about a year ago merged his private company with a public company I was running. So Charlie and I are partnered on that now, and Christina is kind of the flagship project. It's a polymetallic epithermal. It's mostly gold and silver, has some zinc in it as well. Really big veins. Some of these veins are 10 meters wide,
Right.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and they run, it's pretty neat. We've traced them for about 5.5 kilometers along strike. There's a whole series of parallel veins, and they keep going. They kind of go off one edge of our property, and they dive under some younger volcanics, and then about 2.5 kilometers west of that, they reappear. They're ridiculously easy to follow. They outcrop. You don't have to try and figure out where they've gone. They're not faulted off, or yeah, it's
That's
it's
uh,
it's a really nice system.
That's the nature of epithermal vein systems in Mexico. They can be
Yeah,
big, long, and usually they're only 2 to 4 meters wide, but
yeah,
you're getting 10-meter wide veins there. That's pretty exciting.
yeah. They're pretty big veins, especially the main vein, the Guadalupe vein. And it's the one that really outcrops the most prominently. I think at one point it blows out to about 30 meters wide. It's just
Wow.
a massive vein system, and I mean, it's not all mineralized across the whole 10 meters.
Right.
At least not high grades. There's kind of low grade halos around it that are sort of running a gram and a half kind of thing. So we get some. Typically, we'll get anywhere up to about 8 meters of true thickness of high grade, and then a kind of lower grade halo. Sometimes the lower grade halo can run 30, 40 meters around it. So it's pretty interesting stuff.
What kind of caught my attention was that it's still in the quartz breccia.
Yeah.
You're getting those grades. And I don't know if everybody understands epithermal veins like I do because I've been doing my homework for the past 10, 20 years, especially the last 10 years that I've lived in Mexico. And, when you're in the quartz breccia, you're getting mixture of country rock and quartz.
Yeah.
The gold and silver in an epithermal vein system is in the quartz. So have you guys got down to what you think is the boiling zone yet, Tim?
Yeah, it's hard to say, I mean, it's interesting because I used to work for Aurelian Resources in Ecuador when we discovered Fruta del Norte, and there,
Ah,
you had a much clearer kind of indications of where you were in the boiling zone. We could see the sinter, we could see, you could really see all the sort of typical zones you'd see. You'd see it getting more base metals rich as you got deeper. And it's funny, these Mexican vein systems seem to be a bit more complicated, but in a good way, in that, there's no really obvious zonation. in them. You can get high gold numbers up near the surface. You can get high gold numbers deep in the system. You can get base metals up near the surface and deep. And so I'm assuming that it's just a very long-lived
Or you
system and
get
that,
low grade up in the quartz breccia and get
yeah,
down to the boiling zone and it just
yeah,
goes
yeah.
off the charts for grade.
Yeah, I'm just assuming that, you had different depths of burial, different, boiling may have moved up and down in the system. I mean, some of these systems in Mexico in particular seem to have more vertical extent than your typical epithermal. I mean, most epithermals are maybe 100, 150 meters in vertical extent, then you really get out of it. Um, but we've traced this thing probably from the top of the systems around maybe 2,000 meters elevation, where we're getting high grades at surface, and then down at 800 meters elevation, we're still getting high grades.
Okay.
And so it's to have that sort of 1,200 meters of vertical extent in the system, not on one individual vein, but across the parallel veins is pretty interesting, but apparently not that uncommon for some of these Mexican systems.
Well, it is to a degree, when you get sometimes you get the stacked boiling zones, which
Yeah.
are kind of unique here in Mexico.
Yeah.
You get them elsewhere, but to get those stacked boiling zones it happens, and so yeah, the complexity of the mineralizing system could work in your favor. But you recently had some drill results out that were quite impressive as well. Why don't we talk about that project?
Yeah. So, we've been drilling at Christina for, since about March of last year. We took a bit of a break through the rainy season in July and August. It gets difficult to move around with all the rains there. And then went back in September and started drilling again. And the we've been hitting pretty consistent high grade zones within these veins. And, I mean, some of the intercepts we put out have been, I think some of our better ones were 10.7 grams gold equivalent over almost 8 meters, 7.8 meters. And those are true widths. Um,
Oh,
7.5 grams over 7.5 meters true widths. And it's interesting because the metal ratios, it ends up being about by value, about a third gold, a third silver, and a third base metals. And the base metals are mostly zinc. There's a bit of lead and copper in there, but you know, the bulk of it is in the zinc.
okay. And I'm just pulling up your recent news release. Um, Sorry, I didn't have it already up.
No worries.
And my or my website I go to is giving me a little bit of issues right now.
Oh yeah.
But I'm there now. I'm on your website, and yeah, I was looking at that, and something else I like to see are these gold rich
Hmm.
epithermal veins. And
Yeah. Yeah.
like the headline number there was really caught my attention, 10 grams over 2.4 meters, 7
Yeah.
grams over a meter and a half,
Yep.
5.6 grams over 3.6 meters
Yeah.
at that Christina project. And then the other thing I look at a lot is I try to understand the continuity and where the gold is distributed.
Hmm.
And looking at your cross section got me really excited as well, because as you said, you're getting, that 10 grammer was up around 1,300 feet above sea level, and then your 8 grammer in a totally different vein is down around 1,100, and even
Yeah.
at 1050, you're getting good hits. So it certainly looks like you've got an exciting cluster of epithermal veins there.
Yeah, it is pretty interesting, and it's we're the thing with these epithermal veins is the only way to really kind of trace those high grade zones in them is to drill. And we've done a fair bit of drilling there. I think we put about 50 holes in this year, so about call it 15,000 meters. We're going to do about 20,000 meters, but we're just taking a bit of a break now to do some modeling on them and kind of catch up and get our heads around it. And it's the way the resource had previously been done on these veins, it had just been a kind of quick and dirty resource. And they did it with pit shells. So they treated it as an open pit.
Oh,
And you get about 750,000. gold equivalent ounces in indicated and about the same in inferred. And it's about 1.3 grams, but you get a big pit and you get, pretty high strip ratios. And when you got vertical veins like this, they make much more sense to mine them as underground, or at least for the most part. I mean, maybe you put a shallow open pit in at the top, but
Well,
so that's what,
especially because here in Mexico, costs are much lower than they are in
yeah,
a lot of other
yeah,
places. So
yeah,
you can get that low cost and high grade, and
yeah.
they're just money making machines.
Yeah, it's amazing what, people are mining profitably in Mexico. You tell someone you're mining, 2.5 grams underground on a narrow vein, and unless you got the experience of Mexico, people, they almost don't believe you. And yet I've been underground. Charlie and I went underground at San Julian, Fresnillo's big underground mine, just to the east of us in Chihuahua, and like fully mechanized, super modern mine, and they're mining a couple of grams, and it's incredible to watch.
Yeah, that's the beauty of Mexico is the
Yeah.
costs are low, the grades are high.
Hmm.
And that not only makes for a good mining scenario, but it also makes exciting for the exploration side of business.
Yeah.
I mean, I was drilling a project down here, and I had a driller that was doing great work for $100 US dollars all in per meter.
Yeah. 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 We're not paying much more than that now. I think we're maybe up to about 150 a meter.
Yeah,
And
well,
that's
that
for,
was he was drilling for me about 4 or 5 years ago. So yeah,
yeah.
he's
Yeah.
probably at about a buck and a half or 150 as well
Yeah.
on
Yeah. But and
21.
they're good drillers. They're drilling HQ
Awesome.
core for that. And we're getting great recoveries and good productivity. And, yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I'd been working, the previous company I was running was called Fiore Gold, and we had a producing mine in Nevada, and we ended up selling that company to Calibre a couple of years ago. But drilling in Nevada, doing diamond drilling in Nevada, you were looking at $500-600 a meter,
That's
and
what you used to think of when you went to the northern parts of Canada.
yeah,
Now, now it's costing you that much to drill in Nevada.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, Nevada's a funny place. It's expensive, or Chile is even worse. I mean, you could pay $1,000 a meter up in the Andes in Chile to drill there, and
Yeah.
you know,
But
but
they got some reasons. I mean, up there,
yeah,
you're at high elevation, you got
yeah, yeah,
mechanical issues, you got
yeah,
people haven't been able to work up there. You
yeah,
got lots of issues that we don't have
yeah.
down here in sunny Mexico.
No, it's a lot. I mean, the logistics are pretty simple in Mexico, I have to say. And, it's been great. The lab turnarounds have been good. And,
Well,
just,
you're in
it's,
Chihuahua, right?
we are, yeah.
So I think doesn't ALS or somebody have a lab there?
Yeah, they've got prep labs in Chihuahua, and they've got them in Hermosillo, and I think in Durango as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's the beauty because in the delays that are happening with getting drill results back these days is in the sample prep.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the beauty of Mexico, there's lots of sample prep at locations, so
Yeah.
you can get that done quickly. And then
Yeah.
sometimes your turnaround for the whole thing can be a month, where
Yeah.
companies are taking months.
Yeah, yeah, and I've talked to I know some people at ALS, and they tell me that their Mexican prep labs are actually some of their best. They're most efficient, they're fast, they're organized, and just it's really it all kind of comes together working in Mexico.
Well, I think it's indicative of the long history of mining here in Mexico and
Yeah,
how important it is to the economy.
yeah,
I'm still looking at your cross section there, and I'm seeing more things that excite me, Tim. One is that these epithermal vein for the non-geologists out there, these epithermal veins, they tend to occur in clusters as well.
yeah,
And just in this one cross section on figure two in your recent results there, I think there's 4 or 5 veins,
yeah.
and some of them don't have a lot of holes in them.
That's right.
But,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
the other exciting thing about these epithermal vein clusters is that oftentimes you can drill through one and you keep getting alteration and you find a blind vein, And
Hmm.
sometimes those blind veins can be the extra special ones.
Yeah.
I mean, just look at the Fresnillo district, for example, where Fresnillo PLC got their start. You got a cluster right in the city that's about 2 kilometers wide by 2 kilometers long, and there must be 25 veins in there. Then you step over to the Saucito area, which is about 1,000 meters or so away, and veins are still outcropping, and you've got a bunch more veins there. Then you
Yeah.
step just over to that, and you got Mag Silver where nothing was outcropping, and they found blind veins, and now Mag Silver and Fresnillo have a fantastic mine at Juanicipio. So,
Yeah.
I love the potential of what you've got there.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty interesting, and I think the on the Guadalupe vein where most of the drilling's been done, that's where the 90% of the resource is. The other veins have seen a bit of drilling, but it's I mean it's the one thing with epithermal veins, right? You have to do a lot of drilling, and that's why it's fortunate that drilling costs are relatively low in in Mexico.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're often drilling a 150-meter hole to get a 5 meter intercept out of that hole, and if you're lucky, you'll hit a bunch of veins on the way, as you go at the other side.
But the good thing is it doesn't cost you 200 grand
Well,
to get there.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So yeah,
So, one of the things that I noticed that you guys have talked about is that you're pushing towards a resource.
yeah,
And as an exploration guy, I kind of wonder sometimes why companies are in a rush to get to a resource when they haven't even really got to the limits or found everything. Why is that a focus?
yeah. I mean, honestly, a large part of it is for our own benefit. We want to see, just conceptually, what have we got here? What could you put together here? And and I find that often, once you get that resource model, it starts to give you a sense of, okay, what drill spacing do we need to get this stuff into indicated, for example, to eventually, get it into reserves? And and also, where does it look like in that model where if we just stuck one or two more drill holes in, we could, close up a gap in the system and add, a fairly significant number of ounces. Where's the low-hanging fruit in that model? And sometimes it helps you too to I think, when you stop and start to think about the geology and think about how you're modeling the shapes and how the model's looking, it gives you it's maybe time to think about, what's going on here? What are the controls on mineralization? Where are the, you know, do we understand how these high grade shoots are plunging and breaking in the veins? So I think it's as much for us as it is for, the market, as it were.
Well, that's the problem with the market is that it has a way, resource estimates have a way of capping the what people think it could be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why I kind of have a little bit of a pet peeve when I see companies that are too much in a hurry to
Yeah.
get to a resource. Now, there's a whole other situation. If that, the reason that I'm also a bit nervous about that scenario is that I've seen a lot of resource estimates done, and they collect dust for 10, 20, 15 years before they have a preliminary economic assessment even
Yeah.
run on them.
Yeah.
And for me, if I was going to be in a hurry to get to a resource, it would be because I had quickly planned on doing a preliminary economic assessment behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think our goal at this stage is to see, have we got enough here in terms of the resource to get to a PEA, or should we keep drilling and keep growing the resource? I mean, there's so much undrilled vein along this system, not just in the main vein where we've been drilling on Guadalupe, but all the other parallel veins that, I don't think anybody's going to be too concerned about, having capped the resource size or saying that's the limit of the system because there's just so much more of the system that barely has any drill holes in it at all.
Yeah.
And, you know, the
But
other
it's a
thing we,
chronic problem. Everywhere I see companies putting out resources, the other thing it does is it also says you're going into the development discount window of the Lassonde curve.
yeah,
and that can be a long and painful journey as well.
Yeah,
So I kind of am of the mind that until you get close to the what you think are the limits, keep drilling it. You're an
yeah,
exploration company.
yeah. That would be kind of ironic because Pierre Lasson's actually one of our larger shareholders. So
Well, if anyone could go through the Lassonde curve, it's Pierre Lassonde
yeah,
because he's also well aware of what happens at the end of the discount
yeah,
window,
exactly.
because that's when you get to that sweet spot
Yeah,
where you start turning something into production. Camino Rojo and Orla
yeah,
is a perfect example.
yep.
I
No,
started
and
covering them at about a buck.
yeah.
And,
Well, that's really our goal, we have a lot of the same shareholders that Orla has, and also Prime Mining and Atex, and down in Chile, and so Trinity Capital Partners, which is basically Pierre's merchant bank, for lack of a better word, and they're major shareholders with us, and really we've been working very closely with them to kind of recreate the Orla story. Start with one project. Orla started with a project in Panama,
right.
now that's kind of their third or fourth project. And,
But then
you know, the,
they got really excited about Camino Rojo and
yeah,
Zacatecas.
and rightly so. And it's turned out to be a great mine. And they just put out a sulfide resource, an underground sulfide resource the other day. And, they bought Musselwhite and they bought Gold Standard Ventures in Nevada. So I mean that growth started off with one, relatively modest project and then just grew from there. And that's kind of the same thing that we want to do. And in particularly in the market we've had over the last few years, you need that sponsorship. You need a Lassonde or a Lundin or Sprott or Juicer or somebody like that, a
Yep.
name behind you, so that investors are like, yeah, these guys aren't going to just run out of money and sit there doing survival, $100,000 financings to pay salaries. They're gonna have the firepower to carry on, and I think that confidence is what it's the reason we put this company together, because we those guys have shown what they can do with a good management team and that kind of financial backing, and we're going to do the same thing.
I like the sounds of that because it's been a good pick for me, Orla.
Yeah,
And I'm always looking for another Orla. So
yeah.
I like the sounds of that. So, where are you as of today with your drilling? And then let's get into a little bit about catalysts that are upcoming.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've wrapped up the current drilling program. We've got all the core in, got all our assays back, and we've just finished up doing the updated geologic model, modeling the shapes, modeling the vein shapes and everything, bringing all the information we had from those 50 new holes in. And in fact, after we finish our call today, I've got a call with our resource modeler, and we're going to sort of talk to him about scheduling and getting all the files over to him and how we're going to go ahead on that. Um, we've got a really good underground mining engineer who has experience not just in Mexico but in Canada as well. That's going to be working with the resource modeler, because it helps to have that kind of firsthand experience on what real underground mining shapes look like as you're putting together an underground resource. So that'll happen over the next couple of
Not a lot of
months.
hopes and dreams. It'll be more of a realistic resource.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We're not going to be talking about, the tiny little veins that we're trying to mine with no dilution.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that's where we'll be. So in probably sometime in the fall, we'll have a resource estimate out, and then we'll probably restart the drilling at that point. And then in the meantime, I mean, we've got another really interesting project down in Chile, which is a big porphyry copper project that on that one, we're looking for partners on, because it's up in the Andes. It's expensive to drill down there, and I'd rather partner with somebody. And we're actually surrounded by a big Tech Newmont JV that has two porphyries on either side of us, and we sort of have porphyry targets right in the middle of their ground.
Yeah, you're near El Morro, I think, aren't you?
Yeah, it's sort of halfway between El Morro and Relincho, and
That
those are
has a
the
soft spot in my heart because in the 2001 to 2011 gold bull market, I had picked Extoria and Exeter.
yeah,
Well, Exeter to start with because of El
yeah,
Morro and their efforts up there. And then they spun out Extore, and that got bought out. So both
Yeah,
companies got bought out.
yeah.
Now my old friend Yale Simpson, he's semi-retired there and enjoying the good life, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a nice place to work up there. It's easy to get to. You can drive up there. It's 50 kilometers from the city of Vallenar, which is a mining town in, northern Chile. And even so, you're up at not crazy high elevations there. You're up at about 3,800 meters, which is doable. You're not up at 5,000 meters gasping for breath, which
Yeah.
I've done in the past on other projects. So yeah, that one's interesting. We did some geophysics and some geochem on it, and they look like beautiful, beautiful porphyry targets, but until you drill them, you're not going to know. And they've never had a drill hole in them, which is, I think, what's got a couple of our neighbors kind of interested in looking at those.
What's the geochem and the alteration look like?
Yeah, the alteration's beautiful. You get this, the kind of classic porphyry alteration system. In fact, it dates some of the alteration mapping dates back to when I think it was Metalla Resources that originally had El Moro, and they had done some satellite alteration mapping up in there, and they'd identified this illite that was very, very characteristic of El Moro. And if you look at some of the satellite alteration maps, you get this beautiful alteration, spike, this Moro illite, they call it, right over El Moro. And then you get an almost identical spike over what's called our Caballo Muerto target, which is about halfway along between Caballo or between El Moro and the Relincho porphyries. And if you look at the geochem, you get gold, you get moly, you get copper right over the center. You get kind of a zinc halo around it, and you get beautiful veining in there, and it's all just beautifully coincident. And then we did some geophysics over it over the last kind of sort of 6 months, 6 to 12 months, and you get a beautiful mag anomaly, you get a beautiful IP anomaly over it. I mean, it just everything looks you know like you think, oh my God, I got to drill this. And of course,
That's the beauty of those South American porphyries.
yeah,
They leave big footprints, and
yeah,
you
yeah,
can actually just go on Google Earth, and if you know where you're looking, you can
yeah,
actually see them without
oh
it
yeah, yeah,
on Google
yeah.
Earth.
So yeah, so we've got two targets like that, and as I say, we're looking to get a partner to drill those because, I mean, we could probably raise a few $1 million to drill those without too much difficulty, but it's it's almost so binary, right? You might stick 3, 4 holes into that, and you're going to pay a fortune for those holes, and if you don't hit something on those first couple of holes, then what do you do with it? Now the project's kind of lost a bit of momentum where if you get one of the majors involved as a partner, they're going to have a slightly longer time horizon. They
Right.
understand that you got to drill a few holes to find these things and zero in
Plus,
on where
if
the
you look at it
mineralization is.
from a business perspective, if you have the 3 million in the bank, where are you going to get a bigger bang for your buck?
Yeah,
And it
yeah,
looks pretty clear that, what you have in Mexico is going to keep delivering.
yeah, yeah. And I can drill a lot more meters in Mexico for 3 million bucks than I can in Chile. And at some point, you're always going to need a partner to develop a big porphyry system. I mean, even the Lundins had to partner with BHP for Filo. So
Exactly.
it's just they're just big capital intensive systems, and we're also looking at other projects as well. We've got a really steady project flow because of the Trinity guys and because of Pierre Lassonde being a shareholder, and they have good relationships with a lot of the majors. You saw the deal they just did with Orla buying Musselwhite
Yeah.
from Newmont, and of
Yeah.
course they bought Camino Rojo from Goldcorp before that. So
Yeah.
and we get a lot of access to projects like that. So we're pretty active at looking at other projects as well. So grow
So
the company.
are you country agnostic, or do you like Mexico or
Yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, yeah, we obviously like Mexico. I think we're trying to focus on the Americas. I don't like trying to run an Australian project or an African project from Canada is pretty challenging, just time zone wise.
yeah,
And so I think, yeah, anywhere in the Americas, we're pretty happy with. I think I'd want to avoid, you know, a lot of Central America. I think, but Chile, Peru, Argentina,
yeah, all the hot
Mexico,
spots. Yeah.
Canada, the US. Yeah, we're uh, we're pretty. We've worked. Both Charlie and I have worked extensively in all those countries, and we're still pretty happy to stick with those.
Well, I sure like the sound of an Orla 2.0 and Lasan being involved, and of course the drill holes that you have, and where that'll take y'all.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. And right now, I mean, we've tried to keep the share structure of the company really clean. We've only have 60 million shares outstanding, and it's pretty tightly held. I think, between Lassonde, Trinity, we've got one of the gold producers is a strategic. They own about 8.5% of us, and a couple of funds, and that we can probably account for 60% of the stock. Management owns about 12, 13% of the stock, along with their directors, and so it's pretty closely held at the moment.
Yeah, that's another exciting part of your story is that you don't have a lot of stock out. And
No,
how's the
no.
cash position?
We're pretty cashed up. We raised, I think, 13 million about a year ago. Again, this is one of the great advantages of having someone like Pierre Lassonde on the share register is that we did it without any warrants. So it was a straight share deal, and we're still reasonably cashed up. I think in our last financial statements, we had about a little under 4 million in the bank still, and we don't burn a lot when we're not drilling. I have a little office in Vancouver that I sublet off another company, and for the most part, we work from home, and there's really just myself and Charlie, and then a part-time CFO that work for us. So we try to keep the overheads pretty low.
Burn down
Yeah.
until you're drilling. Then, but even then,
Yeah.
in Mexico, that's nothing like drilling in northern Canada or even Nevada these days.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty simple. I mean, our camp is all set up down there. We use contract geos, and it's the same contract geos that have been on this project for years. So they know the project, they know the rocks, and know how to work there.
So catalyst upcoming, the resource is the one.
Yeah, so a couple of things. One is going to be the resource. That's not going to be until the fall. We'll have, hopefully, I'm hoping to have some news on a JV on our Chilean projects to start moving those ahead. Obviously, it's the middle of winter down in Chile right now, so nothing's much is going to be going on there until probably, late September when the snow melts. And then hopefully some M&A news over the next few months.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show and telling my audience about the Fuerte Metals, strong metals. That's what
Yeah,
Fuerte means, folks, in Spanish. It's the English word is strong. So strong metals. We got a strong gold market. Silver's starting to join the gold bull market story, and you guys don't have a lot of stock out and good projects, and maybe
yeah,
looking at getting more good projects.
yeah, exactly.
Did I forget anything, Tim?
No, I think that's it. It was a good chat. I enjoyed it.
Well, we'll have to do it again.
Sounds good.
All right.
All
So
right.
there you go, folks. As always, my shows are for information purposes only. I'm not doing buying or selling recommendations. I try to be an idea generator. And one of the parts of the idea is for you to go out and do your own homework and speak with your financial advisors before making any investment decisions. Tim, good place for them to start their homework is obviously on your website. And how else do they get a hold of you guys?
Yeah, fortemetals.com. There's a email contact there if people want to reach out to us. The info, we don't have an IR person, so it goes to me. I'm happy to respond to shareholders with questions and things like that. And I'm on Twitter and other social media. So all kinds of ways to get a hold
Well,
of
I
us. And
found you on Twitter X, so
yeah,
that's a good place to start. Just look for Tim Warman, and I think that's a good place to start. And again, do that homework. So on that note, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.